Daf Yomi, tractate Zevachim, page 114a, top of the page, with the word Bishloma, Rova Benirva Mishkanos Le de Akdeshinu Mikara Yehadarivo. In brackets it says Aripao. Granted, with regard to an animal that actively copulated with a person, or an animal that was the object of bestiality, you find circumstances in which the exemption for one who slaughters it outside the temple courtyard cannot be based on the fact that it is not fit to be brought to the entrance of the tent of meeting. For example, a case when only where one initially consecrated it, at which point it was fit to be brought to the temple courtyard, and then engaged in bestiality with it, since it was initially fit to be brought to the temple courtyard, another verse is needed to exclude it. But with regard to an animal that was set aside for idol worship, or one that was worshipped, this explanation is not tenable, since an animal that was already consecrated would not become disqualified because a person does not render forbidden an item that is not his. The Gemara responds that it is possible to disqualify a consecrated item in the case of offerings of lesser sanctity, such as a peace offering, and in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, who says, an offering of lesser sanctity is the property of the owner. Ditanya umalaba me'alba. This is as it is taught in a Braita, that the verse states with regard to the obligation to bring a guilt offering for robbery, for taking a false oath concerning unlawful possession of the property of another. If anyone sin and commits a trespass against the Lord, and deal falsely with his neighbor in a manner of deposit, or of pledge, or of robbery, or have oppressed his neighbor, Leviticus 5:21. The term against the Lord serves to include one who takes an oath with regard to another's offerings of lesser sanctity, since they are the property of their owner. This is the statement of Rabbi Yossi Haglili. The Gemara summarizes, therefore, all of the cases listed in the Mishnah are cases in which the animal was initially fit to be brought to the entrance of the tent of meeting, but was subsequently disqualified as an offering. An animal that actively copulated with a person, and an animal that was the object of bestiality, are disqualified after being consecrated due to a matter of forbidden sexual intercourse. An animal that was set aside for idol worship, or one that was worshipped as an object of idol worship, becomes forbidden after it was consecrated in the case of an offering of lesser sanctity, which, according to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, is the property of its owner. Etnan umechir kilayim yotzei dofen bivlados chadashim. In the case of an animal that was given as a payment to a prostitute, or as the price of a dog, or an animal born of a mixture of diverse kinds, or an animal born by cesarean section, none of which could have occurred at a time that the animal was fit to be sacrificed. The Mishnah is referring to the offspring of sacrificial animals that were given as payment to a prostitute, or or as a price of a dog while in utero. The animals were fit to be brought as a sacrifice while they were still part of a consecrated animal, and only following birth are they consecrated to be unfit for sacrifice. Are they considered to be unfit for sacrifice? Although these offspring are still part of the consecrated animal, while in utero, and as such, one might say that the status of the payment to a prostitute or the price of a dog should not take effect with regard to them. The Tana of the Mishnah holds that with regard to the offspring of sacrificial animals, they are sanctified only as they are from the time of birth, but not in utero. Therefore, they can be disqualified by serving as payment to a prostitute or as the price of a dowry. The Mishnah cites a disagreement between the rabbis and Rabbi Shimon with regard to temporarily blemished animals. Rabbi Shimon holds that one who sacrifices them outside the temple courtyard violates a prohibition, as they will be fit for sacrifice after the passage of time, whereas the rabbis hold that one is exempt. The Mishnah cites two similar disagreements with regard to doves, whose time of fitness has not yet arrived, that are slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, and with regard to one who slaughters an animal itself and its offspring on one day, where the latter, which is not fit for being sacrificed until the next day, is slaughtered outside the temple courtyard. Utzrichi, ditzan abalimum mishum demeisi, aval toiren de la meisi, emala, demoid le Shimon. The Gemara comments, and all of these cases are necessary, as if the Mishnah had taught the disagreement only in the case of temporary blemished animals, one would think that the rabbis deem exempt one who sacrifices outside the temple courtyard only in that case because they are repulsive. But with regard to doves, whose time of fitness has not yet arrived, which are not repulsive and which will be fit when their time arrives, I will say that this is not the halacha, and that the rabbis concede to Rabbi Shimon that one does violate a prohibition. And if the Mishnah taught the disagreement only in the case of the doves, whose time of fitness has not yet arrived, one could say that it is only in this case that Rabbi Shimon holds that one who sacrifices them outside violates the prohibition, because they are not defined as fit for sacrifice and rejected. Their time of fitness simply has not arrived. But with regard to temporarily blemished animals, which were fit for sacrifice and then disqualified, I would say that this is not the halacha, as Rabbi Shimon concedes to the rabbis, that one who sacrifices them outside the temple courtyard does not violate a prohibition, since they are not fit to be sacrificed as offerings. And if the Mishnah had taught only these two cases, meaning temporarily blemished animals and doves, whose time of fitness had not yet arrived, I would say that the rabbis hold that one who slaughters them outside the temple courtyard is not liable because their disqualification is inherent. But in the case of the animal itself and its offspring, where the disqualification comes to the offspring from an external factor, meaning that its parent was slaughtered that day, I will say that the rabbis concede to Rabbi Shimon that one who slaughters an animal and its offspring outside the temple courtyard does violate the prohibition. Therefore, it is necessary for the Mishnah to teach the disagreement in each case. Shehoy Rabbi Shimon Amel, my time to Rabbi Shimon. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Shimon says in the case of any sacrificial animal that is fit to be sacrificed after the passage of time, if one sacrifices it outside the courtyard, he is in violation of a prohibition, but there is no liability for karet. Rabbi Shimon did not specify what prohibition is violated. The Gemara therefore asks, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon? Amar Bilam, Reish Lakish Kemakra, Lo Tasun, Kechol Asher Anachnu Osim Po Hayom, Amanahu Moshe Yisrael, Ki Alitu Le'aretz, Yisharim Takrivu. Yisharis Takrivu, Choyvos Lo Takrivu. Rabbi Ila'ah. Rabbi Ilya says that Reish Lakish says that the verse states, "You shall not do all that we do here this day, every man whatsoever is right in his own eyes, for you have not as yet come to the rest and to the inheritance which the Lord your God gives you." Deuteronomy 12:8 and 9. Moses said the following to the Jewish people: "When you enter Eretz Yisrael, upright offerings, meaning offerings that one believes are proper to bring due to one's own generosity, such as vow offerings and gift offerings, you may sacrifice, but obligatory offerings you may not sacrifice, even in the tabernacle in Gilgal, until you arrive at rest," at the rest being Shiloh, at which point you may sacrifice them. The Gilgal legabi Shiloh nichus azmanu v'kavanu Moshe lo ta'asun. And since obligatory offerings during the period of Gilgal, in relation to the period of Shiloh, are considered offerings, this time has not yet arrived, and Moses said to the Jewish people concerning them, "You shall not do during that period." It follows that one who sacrifices an offering whose time has not yet arrived is in violation of the prohibition, "You shall not do." Rabbi Yirmiyah said to Rabbi Zera, "Therefore it is prohibited to sacrifice offerings whose time has not yet arrived. If it is prohibited to sacrifice," this is not what he's saying, this is just an explanation. Rabbi Yirmiyah says to Rabbi Zera, and then pause. "Therefore it is prohibited to sacrifice offerings whose time has not yet arrived, even if they are sacrificed in the tabernacle, as was the case in Gilgal." Now it's this question: if so, anyone who sacrifices an offering whose time has not yet arrived, even if he sacrifices it inside the temple courtyard. We turn to 114b now. On the top, if so, anyone who sacrifices an offering whose time has not yet arrived, even if he sacrifices inside the temple courtyard, top of 114b now, should also receive lashes for sacrificing it, just as one would for violating other Torah prohibitions. Why did Rabbi Zera say elsewhere that one who slaughters inside the temple courtyard an offering whose time has not yet arrived does not receive lashes for having violated the prohibition of "it shall not be accepted," Leviticus 22:23, which is the general prohibition against sacrificing animals that are not fit to be sacrificed? Rabbi Zera explains that he does not receive lashes because the verse has transmuted the negative precept into a prohibition that is stated as a positive mitzvah in the verse, but from the 8th day forward it may be accepted, Leviticus 22:27. There is no punishment of lashes for violating such a prohibition. Rabbi Yirmiyah is asking that one should still receive lashes for having violated the prohibition of "you shall not do." The Gemara responds, "Hani mili Ramanan, Rabbi Shimon Nachenami." The Gemara responds, that statement of Rabbi Zera applies only according to the opinion of the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah and hold that the verse that states "you shall not do" does not indicate that one who slaughters an animal whose time has not yet arrived is in violation of a prohibition. But according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, one would indeed receive lashes for slaughtering an animal whose time has not yet arrived inside the temple. And I think we'll stop here, continue on with side B in the next video. Bezrat Hashem.